So we have seen the implementation of both for and while loop for our printable function. You might already have seen the differences and similarities, but it's always good to have a look at them separately, and that's what we are going to do. We can see that the for loop has three blocks inside parentheses: the initialization, condition, and update clause, but the while loop just has one. Even though the while loop just has one block, the initialization is still done, but outside the while loop. The main difference here between the two loops is that the variable counter in our for loop can only be accessed within for loop and not outside of the for loop due to the scope of variable. If you try to access or manipulate the variable counter outside the for loop, Java will throw an error. But in the case of while loop, you will still be able to change or access the counter variable, as the variable is declared outside while loop and the scope of the variable is the whole function printable. We then have the conditional block, and for both the for and while loop, it's inside the parentheses, so no surprise there. And finally, we have our update clause. For the for loop, that's the last statement inside the parentheses. But for the while loop, this update clause is inside the loop, as we need to make sure that we update the variable after the print statements are executed. Imagine what would happen if you don't update the variable inside the while loop. Your loop will never stop and your program will crash. So even though the placement of update clause is a little different, the idea for these two loops are still pretty same.